Starting to put in the bulkheads means that we got to make some real hard and firm decisions about what the interior layout of the boat looks like. And in terms of the construction of the boat, this is probably the area where we have the most leeway. As long as we don't put an excessive amount of weight in one place or another, we should be able to just move the interior around and do kind of almost whatever we want within reason. So I've got the plans pulled out this morning, and my friend Satchel should be here soon. And Satchel's done a decent amount of cruising and a lot of racing and is trained as a naval architect. That's actually what he does for a living. So I'm hoping that he'll have some good insights. The interior layout that Atkin has is pretty standard from a boat from the 1930s, 1940s. People weren't living aboard. That wasn't terribly common. And most of them most of the boats are pleasure cruises. So they were trying to sleep a bunch of people, going out for short durations, going for a little trip, going for a voyage. But they weren't necessarily designed or set up for someone to live aboard for years and years and years and years, which is what we're building Arabella for. And maybe Satchel, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is like a pretty typical layout from this time period, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is probably pretty close to the standard layout to this day. You know, for a boat in this size range, yeah, it's really common to have the forward V-berth. It's really common to have the galley and the chart table right down the ladder, and then what they do with the middle is either double berth or kind of like a booth style offset to one side. But yeah, this is, I mean, this hasn't changed in the, 100 years since he drew this.
Yeah, it's been almost that long. So why is this like the typical layout? Why do you see this so much?
I mean, I think, I'm not an expert on that. I think it's basically just about using the space and fitting the interior to the shape of the boat. So you're at your max beam, you also generally have like the most width at the floor plate, standing level. So that's why you see this as kind of the main living space. I think the galley's pretty often here because, you spend a lot of time on deck and you spend a lot of time here and you spend a lot of time eating. Right? You want to be able to have quick access to food, or that the person eating can still, keep an eye on what's going on deck and get up quickly if you need. The chart table right here is, I think, probably more important in an era where you're mostly navigating by chart, where we have GPS and modern navigation. You don't need to be like, when I first sailed a long voyage, it was on an Atkin design, and we had charts, and all we had was a GPS that read Latin long, and we would basically prick the chart with our Latin long every hour, which is one step, barely one step above celestial, right? You didn't have to find your position with the sextant, but you still had to use the charts for all of your navigation. Previously, you would literally stand in the companionway and look down at the chart and kind of refresh yourself where you're headed. Yeah, and then forward V-berth. A lot of people this is a comfy berth in port. On a modern boat, it's not super comfy at sea because of the pounding. I think that this boat probably doesn't pound very much. It's probably still a pretty comfortable place. Though this tends to be one of the wettest spaces in the boat if you're using that forward hatch at sea. Yeah. So this is just a classic. It's like the shotgun kitchen from the 1970s. So first, what do you see about this that you don't like?
Well, in terms of a full-time, for years, live aboard, let's see if I can get this camera right here. There is no place, and this is going to sound kind of trivial, but there's no place to sleep two people. So cruising with a partner, there is no double bed for anchorages or that kind of thing, which the boat will spend quite a bit of time.
You don't want to be sleeping separate, sleeping in separate beds across this little gap here.
Let me ask you this. Do you and your significant other like sharing a twin bed between the two of you?
Absolutely not. A queen bed isn't big enough.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a concern. But I think taking and rearranging the forepeak a little bit to having a double bunk on one side and lockers on the other that's pretty common to my understanding.
Yep.
It's not a huge tweak.
Yep.
This doesn't have the saloon table drawn in, so it makes it seem like there's a lot of floor space, but when you put a saloon table here, you have to slide along either side, and you don't have much room. So if you have one or two people sitting at the saloon table and someone needs to go forward to use the head, you're kind of all tripping on each other and sliding past the saloon table, which I don't necessarily love. I think the chart and the galley, that makes total sense. I don't think I would move that. So with that in mind, here's kind of my brainchild. So obviously I just traced the boat onto some graph paper.
Yep.
And then that also allowed me to trace like the size of a bunk and kind of play with those.
You know, people have gotten taller since like the 1930s.
Yeah, I haven't, but some people have, yeah.
True. Good point here. Average Atkins size.
So I've got the double bed up in the forepeak and lockers. And then I considering moving the head from up forward to farther aft. And that way you could come down the companionway and the head would be right there, the galley would be right there, the gas range and the wood stove. And that way, if you are cruising or somebody is a night owl or an early bird, they can go up on deck, they can check out the nav station, they can go to the head, they can light the wood stove, they can make some coffee and not disturb someone who's up forward in the bunk or who's up forward in the forepeak. So I'm thinking of putting just one berth on the side and moving the saloon table over a bit so that you have good access on one side. And then it's kind of crazy, but I think I would like to see if we can get the pattern maker's vise into the boat. I think for work and repairs down the road, that thing would be absolutely unbelievable. And having a very small workbench would also be really handy. And then another big change is to tuck a pilot berth in the stern. The diesel engine nowadays is much smaller than the 6-cylinder gas one that he has here.
Right,
So
right,
this
right.
this monstrosity is huge.
Look at the flywheel on that.
Yeah, our diesel's way smaller. So that opens up some more options back here. And I think having a pilot berth where you could, not interfere with anybody up forward who's relaxing and lounging or doing some project or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason it's called a pilot berth, right?
Yeah.
It's for the pilot. It's for the person who is getting up and going back to sleep and getting up and going back to sleep. I think the pilot berth is a great choice. When I look at designs that I consider, long-term cruising on, the pilot berth is, almost a must-have. It's a much more comfortable berth just because of the position in the boat, right? It has pretty low movement, especially in a following sea. And yeah, you come down the ladder, you hop into the berth, you set the 20-minute alarm, and then it goes off, and you climb back up, and you're up on deck. Yeah, I think that's a great addition. And then you're going to put another berth on this starboard side.
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of climbing gear to carry.
Right.
So there's the haul bags, and I'm thinking I'd like to try to build the haul bags in as basically a locker.
Okay.
Just make a spot where the haul bags sit on a shelf and get strapped in with all the gear in them. And if I can make it work, I think some sort of like fold down pipe berth hammock spot, that kind of thing would be nice. So basically you could have one or two people in the forepeak, one on the settee berth, one in the pilot berth, and then you could pull down the pipe berth. And I think that would be more than enough people sleeping on the boat.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going somewhere and you need everybody to be able to sleep, I mean, if you're going somewhere and you have 5 people on the boat, not all 5 people are sleeping at once.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like pretty much guaranteed. So, yeah. I mean, I don't even know if that's. Yeah, maybe it's nice if you have to like use. I know you don't want to you don't want to use the forepeak for storage, but I'm just so stuck in the paradigm of like, you bring down wet sails, they go in the forepeak. I know that's a little different boat style. Yeah, it'd be nice to have another little fold down berth. Yeah, I mean, you literally take pipe and canvas and you make a berth.
Yeah.
Put a little, camping air mattress on it. It's pretty comfortable.
Yeah, and I think that would be one of the last berths to be occupied on the boat.
Okay, so this locker you're kind of getting rid of as an independent thing, or you're just rearranging the storage over to the starboard side?
A little bit of both. So rearranging some storage to the starboard side, but also Atkin has the cook stove as the coal stove, and we have both the gas range and the wood stove. So that locker space is kind of getting taken up in a little ways by the wood stove.
Right.
I mean, there's still a decent amount of locker space behind the wood stove.
Mm-hmm.
If that goes in there the way I think it'll go in there.
Yeah, and then you've got a little bit more of a pathway by here, instead of having to go around the saloon table. And what about the water tanks? You're going to keep those?
Yeah, I gotta figure those out. So I think one could go under the berth in there. And we could probably put one like underneath where the berth workbench area is gonna go here. Potentially underneath the head. Potentially underneath where the wood stove goes. And then there's always the option of sticking them in the bilge. I'd like to do stainless steel water tanks, so I'd like to keep them out of the bilge if possible. Mm-hmm. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see what Atkin had here. It's not it doesn't waste a lot of space because you contour it to the hole on one side and then you get this flat surface on the top, and you can use that for the bottom of your berth or the start of like bottom of a storage cabinet or something. It's funny, he makes it seem like there's he makes good use of this space up here, right? And I think this is generally the hardest space to use on the boat and kind of the hardest to conceive on a plan view drawing like this, right? A lot of your volume is just under the deck here in this area, but it's not, it's a far reach back from the edge, and it's harder to use. So what are you thinking for that?
I think that would be mostly storage.
Okay. In terms of, you're gonna like build a built-in cabinet, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you actually, now that you kind of have an idea of the whole picture, I've got a bit of it mocked up in the boat if you want to go down in there, and we can kind of like...
Let's go take a look.
Take a look in real space.
Wearing my shipyard shoes today.
Adventure Crocs.
Well, we got to go mountain biking after this. Look at these beautiful house sides.
Someone on Instagram said, yuck.
They do smell yucky.
Everyone's got an opinion. Oh, yeah, the wet.
You gotta let them off, guys. Get plenty of time. Okay.
So this is, I'm going to stay up here so I can kind of see the whole thing, but this is the rough mock-up. So we've got the first bulkhead is temporarily fit there. Got a little more work to do, but it's close. And then the frame and panel mahogany there to starboard, that'll, I think, ultimately end up being the entranceway to the forepeak. So we'll make that panel into a door. Got Victoria's saloon table there, the wood stove, and a bench.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit down on this bench.
Yeah, no, it is a mock-up at best. It's House of Cards.
Ooh, this is pretty. Wow. Where'd you get this again?
From a guy on Cape Cod. $250.
That's really cool.
I know. There should be like a 1,000 before that. Yeah, we got a screaming deal.
Okay, so you come down the ladder. Ladder's about here. This is kind of the final position.
Yep, the ladder's pretty much there. I think I'm gonna make it come in, go forward a little bit more, so that first step, is a little bit beefier. And then we will have to build a platform underneath it like it has, because it lands to starboard, so it ends up landing on the hull.
Right. So you need kind of a little step down.
Just a little step there, yeah. Something for it to land on.
Right. And so then we're talking about nav table like right here.
Yep, something like that.
Okay, with the little swing out stool. Do a little squat. Okay, so pilot berth is kind of tucked under here.
Yep.
There's more room than I thought getting behind the ladder and around the engine. So that's
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you would go behind the ladder that way, or if you would go like on top of the nav table and in. I'm not quite sure on that one yet.
Yeah, that's probably true because the galley's going to be here. But so that's interesting. It seems like so if you've got stove, sink,
Yep.
right? And then you've got chest, freezer. You have a lot. You were talking about putting something behind this ladder.
Yeah, so we got to find a spot to mount all of the filters.
Okay.
And I would like those, although they're not pretty to look at, I would like them to be very visible so that there's no like having to open a dark locker to see if the fuel filter is looking good. It's just right there. You stare at it all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that maybe a spot back there to put that kind of thing, and also some sort of little wet locker I think could be nice. If you come down below and you got your foulies on, you can just hang them up behind the companionway where they're likely to get dripped on anyways, and not be dragging that wet stuff through the whole boat.
Yeah, that seems smart. Okay, right. So then we're talking about, this seems like you put some grab handles here and you just slide in. And that's a pretty, that's a lot of berth. It's a lot of space.
I don't think it would have to be a coffin.
No, not at all. Especially with, the clear deck above looking back. Yeah. The berth's only going to extend back to about here, and then you've still got plenty of space under the cockpit.
There's still tons of room in the lazarette even after the berth. Yep.
Okay. All right. And then the stove. Are these panel mock-ups?
Yeah, so obviously you need some sort of heat shield around the wood stove so that you don't bump against it and burn yourself. Those will end up being some sort of...
I think you should go sauna style, just rocks.
Just rocks.
Piled in a cage.
Oh yeah, that's
You can pick up one rock from each place you go. We can't use this as a sauna, right? That won't be good for the boat if we just crank this up.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's too bad. Maybe you can just pop it out and have a little tent on shore.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh all that much. I carried it in by myself.
Oh man. Okay. And then what's this hanging here?
Okay, so that is one of the frames from Victoria, and we've got 3 sets of doors that fit in there. So that my thought is that very flimsy piece of cedar that the level is sitting on, that would basically represent where the settee berth there would be.
Okay.
And that will go back until it hits the bilge stringers, and then we'd mount that panel somewhere along where it is now and put the doors in the front of it again. And that would end up being your backrest, and throw some pillows against it. And then those would be locker doors that you would open up, and then above that would probably be a shelf and books and knickknacks and whatever.
You gotta have space for those knickknacks. Yeah, right. So this is that space we were kind of talking about on the plans, where you've got a surprising amount of volume behind this shelf, and then even above it you have another surprising amount of volume.
Yeah.
But people often put kind of a net on the front of that folds up or folds down, and then you have provision storage in a place it's visible, so you remember what you have.
Yep.
This table's beautiful.
Yeah, another gem from Victoria.
Fits pretty well. So then you come All right. Well, there's not much to see on this side. You haven't mocked this up.
No, so I'm thinking you can see where the haul bags are hanging out right now.
And there's a larger one than that?
There's a larger one than that. Yep, small, medium, and large. And they don't pack down super well. So I think the best way to store them is actually going to be like using them almost as a locker. So I think we'll build like a shelf that they sit into. We can shove them right up against the hull, pack them full of gear, and strap them down. And then, we'll know that the ropes are in the middle one or the medium one, and the rack is in the small one, and the tents and sleeping pads and bags are all packed up into the big one. And basically the adventure gear can be consolidated to the hull bags.
Yeah, I mean, adventure gear is really important. It's half the reason you're building the boat, right?
Oh yeah, at least half the reason. Yeah, super important.
I guess my only question is like, is there a place that is less, because this stuff isn't generally used when you're at sea.
Yep.
Is there a place that's less accessible that this could like have a secondary storage and you could have like, I don't know. I'm just thinking like maybe these could go in the forepeak somewhere or in the.
It's a possibility. Yeah. Yeah, this is all very much in the entry mock-up stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely an idea.
I mean, I think, yeah, storing if the thing you're trying to store is its own locker, then yeah, don't build anything else to store it in, obviously. That's pretty cool, but yeah, maybe, I mean, your head's going to go here. Yeah, I mean. Okay, so should I open this door and go up into the forepeak?
There's the plywood behind that panel isn't cut out yet.
But it's all finished. The berth's all done up there.
Oh no, there's
you
nothing.
Sleep in.
It's just a big empty forepeak right now.
You're supposed to say yeah, it's done.
If you want to crawl past the hull bag there, you can go take a look in the forepeak.
Smells good up here.
Yeah.
Man, this bulkhead. Whew.
Yeah, they're gonna be pretty when they're finished.
Did you laminate it this big, or is this two next to each other?
Oh no, I laminated it this big, and I cut a whole bunch off to get it to fit. Yeah, I think the biggest panel I made was 5.5 feet by 8 feet. I've got a couple more in the house that are full sized that we're gonna cut up for the head.
That's really cool.
Well, I figured I would just make them big, and then we could pattern out whatever we needed.
Yeah.
And then all of the small pieces that we off-cut are going to be useful.
Yeah.
So, no
okay,
problem.
so double bed. The nice thing about doing the double bed on one side is you can raise it enough so that you get like at least double width, maybe, if not more.
Yeah, so I think, you got the mast that goes in,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from maybe even make it U around the mast a little bit, and then get narrower up forward where I am now.
Right. Yeah, so that's going to be up like this kind of height,
Yeah, it's probably going to be,
if not
your
higher.
end of it will probably,
Yeah.
the aft end will probably be around the top of the build stringers, yeah, to be able to get the width. And then we'll have great storage underneath it.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of room.
Mm-hmm.
And then I figure from like build stringers up here, we'll just put lockers
Right.
all along the side here. So we'll have a ton of storage up forward. And then if I come where you are, this way.
We can take a selfie.
Oops, Satchel just knocked something over. The anchor locker will go right up here at the bottom of the Samson post, and then we've got a ton of storage up forward as well.
Yeah.
Which you don't want to put anything heavy up there, but there's a good amount of room.
I mean, yeah, like maybe spare lines or something.
Spare lines, spare sails.
Yeah.
That could actually be a place to shove one or two of the bigger haul bags that have like sleeping pads and tents and other lighter things in them.
Yeah. I mean, depends how you. You're right. Is the access going to be from in here, kind of around the?
Yeah, it'll be from in here around the Samson post.
Yeah, then it'll be dry. I don't see any reason to not to use that.
Yeah, and the nice thing too with the haul bags for storage is they're very water resistant.
Yeah.
Very, very water resistant. So you close them up, and they, I wouldn't throw them in a river. They're not a dry bag, but you get a little drip on them, and they'll be good.
They're completely sealed around the sides and the bottom.
Yeah, and they got drain holes in the bottom, too,
really?
so if they fill up, they'll just drain out.
Nice, yeah.
I mean, they're made to be dragged up a big wall.
What about, have you thought about where you're going to, well, I was going to say, have you thought about where you're going to store, like, trash? One of the things we found really nice was, like, we had a 4-peak kind of compartment like that, and it had a airtight hatch, and we would just take the trash bags and we just throw them in there and seal it. It was like, no, like, don't have to smell that. But I guess you're probably not going to have much.
Try not to have much.
Yeah.
And I think if we're smart about, like, washing the trash with salt water, so it's not all stinky, goopy stuff, we should be able to keep it to a... I mean, I don't know. I go in the backcountry for 2-3 weeks at a time and end up with, like, a tiny little trash bag that doesn't smell at all. So I'd imagine can do pretty similar on this.
I think the problem is we were eating dehydrated meals every day.
Yeah.
No, nobody's spending the time to wash out the inside of that
No.
disgusting glob.
Cool. Well, shall we go get changed and jump on some bikes? And
Let's go mountain biking. That's why I'm really here.